A train derailment in North Dakota that gets almost completely ignored in favor of the Nashville shooting comes to light. We'll be talking a bit about what actually happened there, some of the reasons why this isn't as big of a deal as what's going on in East Palestine, and where we go from there. So we'll start out talking about that today. Speaking of Nashville, most of the media has gone radio silent over the shooting in Nashville, but I do have some things talking about the aftermath and some of the reactions of this coming from various right-wing outlets because, well, let's face it, CNN, Politico, MSDNC, The Hill, and etc. are all done with it. So we won't be getting anything from them, but we will be reading rather from The Blaze and The Daily Wire. 2 more weeks Blue Anon. That's right. The New York grand jury investigating Trump will break for almost all of April. Just 2 more weeks, and then 2 more weeks Blue Anon, and then 2 more weeks, and 2 more weeks again. So we'll talk about that, what's happening there, and what this means. And Governor Hobbs' press secretary resigns after a controversial tweet following the school shooting in Nashville. She first is excoriated for the tweet and then does resign afterwards, which means, hey, at least sometimes we can have some self-awareness. It is going to be all this and more. I was the one flying the balloon. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. You know, one of these days I really have to get into DLive, see if I can find their actual dashboard somewhere, and figure out why I have no DLive. I like having DLive. I really do. It's really nice, too, for people who come back in and check out the program after the fact, or even come in late because YouTube doesn't always show the previous live chat that's out there, and Twitch, I mean, that'll clear your live chat and just start you over from where you started from over on that side. So it's a good tool to have. And it's a really, really good backup for in case, you know, for whatever reason, all the big names come out and decide to sweep you under the rug at the same time. But yeah, it's like it has been a week at this point. And wait, did I say something and it just got fixed? Nope, it did not. It tried, but it did not. So I thought maybe we had it fixed, but yeah, I'm watching the restream monitor and it just popped in and said, it's streaming. And then it wasn't streaming anymore. So, yeah, I got to figure out what to do with that because I love the platform. It's always been good, but if we can't have it, we might have to go in a different direction with this. But that's not what we're here to talk about, anything behind the scenes. I am going to try to keep it a little bit early tonight based on the fact that I'm going to be traveling after we get out of here. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know what we're going to have with that or where we go. But yeah, that is one thing that I'm going to try to do for the night. But before we start making plans into that, well, we got to get right down into the main news of the day. So before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Breckenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, and more as we bring you a better news experience from the common man for the common man. That is right. For too long, we've all got our news, culture, politics, religion, and a host of other things from people who wear suits that cost more than our houses. No more. Instead, let's get our news, our politics, our culture from people who are just like us. So go check out all that great programming. It is going to be a great time. And let's get down into the news of the day, starting with the finance, which we will see if we can fly through today. Oh, hey, look, that's me on the screen because I'm still looking at the monitor here. Let's start out with the Dow. The Dow today ended at 32,717.60. It shot up after the futures, about 1% after the futures, and then just stayed steady throughout the day with a little bit of a lift coming at the very, very end of the day. That is up 323.35 points or 1% on the day. So we'll talk just a bit about that from CNBC, looking in at your Bitcoin, which is at $28,389 US and 40 US cents. That is a significant rise on the Bitcoin today, up $1,115 US and 30 US cents, or 4.09% on the day. So your Bitcoin collectors had a winning day today. Looking in at the gas prices around the Madison area, where we are sitting at $3.40 almost steadily all across the Madison area, with the $3.20 and the $3.30 on the isthmus itself. But anywhere else you look around the area, we got a $3.40, a $3.40, a $3.40, a $3.40, a $3.40, and even up around here, we're up at $3.42, which is long, far away from the Madison area. But still worth mentioning that when all this started going up in Madison, ours went up too. So that is what we have there. Let's grab one from CNBC, talking about what happened on the markets today. From CNBC, stock futures are a little changed as investors come off winning day. Live updates from Alex Herring. Yeah, I just did the Biden thing. Read the line! Stock futures were a little changed on Wednesday night. Futures tied to the Dow lost 15 points, trading near flat. S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures were also near the flat lines. The moves come amid a hectic week for stocks. The three major indices ended Wednesday higher, with the NASDAQ leading the way with a roughly 1.8% jump. The S&P and the Dow followed at 1.4% and 1% higher respectively. Those gains mark a reversal from Tuesday, when all three indices ended the session lower. Big tech stocks contributed to Wednesday's advance. Amazon popped 3%, while Meta and Netflix each gained more than 2%. Regional banks closely followed, since Silicon Valley Bank's collapse earlier this month also finished the session higher, with the SPDR S&P Regional Banking ETF adding around 1%. The moves were over the course of the week stem from Wall Street's attempts to weigh varying factors, said Thomas Martin, a senior portfolio manager at Globalt Investment. Those factors, he said, include the latest batch of corporate earnings, the future path of interest rates, and potential for a recession, and, as of recent weeks, the state of those banks. There's always been the natural seesaw, but it's never been like this, he said. There's just so many things that are on investors' minds. On Thursday, investors will watch for economic data on weekly jobless claims and the gross domestic product. Boston Federal Reserve President Susan Collins, Richmond Fed President Thomas Barkin, and Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari are all slated to speak in the afternoon. So, a few things to watch, a few things to see. We will start getting our GDP numbers this week, so we will see some of the preliminaries on what happened in quarter one of 2023. I think it's going to be just about flat this time through. But that's what we have for there. And on the layoffs report, EA, I guess it really isn't in the game. EA Sports, EA in general, is laying off 6% of its workers. From Emma Roth. Electronic Arts is laying off 6% of its workforce, as reported on the Wall Street Journal in a blog post published on Wednesday. EA CEO Andrew Wilson says the job cuts come as the game publisher looks to reevaluate its investment strategy and reduce office space. As we drive for greater focus across our portfolio, we are moving away from projects that do not contribute to our strategy, reviewing our real estate footprint, and restructuring some of our teams, Wilson states. These decisions are expected to impact approximately 6% of our company's workforce. While Wilson doesn't mention the specific departments that the layoffs are affecting, he says it will provide the opportunities for our colleagues to transition onto other projects where possible. As noted by the journal, EA reported having 13,000 employees last year, which means a 6% cut could eliminate around 780 jobs. The company has already started notifying some of the affected workers earlier this quarter and says it expects this to continue through early next fiscal year. But don't worry, everything is fine. It's all good. It's all fine. There's nothing to worry about in this economy. It's the strongest economy ever. Now pack up your things and get the hell out of our office. All right. Let's get down into the main news of the day. And we are going to start with a train derailment. Now, this is a couple days old, but this largely got ignored. Train derails in rural North Dakota and spills chemicals. A CP train derailed in rural North Dakota Sunday night and spilled hazardous materials, but local authorities and the railroad said that there was no threat to public safety. There were no injuries and no fire associated with the derailment, which occurred in a rural area outside of Windermere, a town of several hundred people about 60 miles southwest of Fargo. CP spokesperson Andy Cummings said 31 of the 70 cars on the train, including several carrying hazardous materials, left the track around 11:15 p.m. Sunday. 4 cars filled with liquid asphalt and 2 rail cars filled with ethylene glycol spilled some of those chemicals in the derailment, and Cummings said a car carrying propylene was punctured and released some vapor. It wasn't immediately clear how much of the chemicals were released, but there were no waterways nearby, and the chemical spills were contained at the site of the derailment. The railroad's hazardous materials experts are working with local first responders to clean up the spill. Several roads in the area were shut down. Cummings said the railroad believes a broken rail caused the derailment. Railroad safety has been in the spotlight nationally ever since last month's fiery derailment of a Norfolk Southern train near East Palestine. Roughly half of that town of about 5,000 people near the Pennsylvania border had to be evacuated after officials decided to release and burn toxic chemicals. Federal regulators and members of Congress have proposed reforms they want railroads to make to prevent future derailments. So, that is what we have with that. And honestly, they keep coming out and saying that this is no big deal. This is kind of a big deal still. So, and we can see everything bunched up over there after the derailment. A lot of plow marks out here and a lot of people trying to drag cars in and out of here to try to get things back up onto the track and moving and get the damaged and beyond repair cars out of the area. A little bit of a review from Valley News Live out of Fargo. How dangerous are the chemicals spilled in Windermere train derailment? From Bailey Hurley. Cleanup and search for answers continues tonight after the train went off its tracks on Sunday in a rural Windermere. Officials with CP say a broken rail is likely what caused it. The derailment left hazardous chemicals, including antifreeze and liquid asphalt, to leak from the 7 of the cars, but just how dangerous are those chemicals? Well, yeah, didn't we discuss this yesterday in your Discord, Grant? Anyway, overall, Bill Seuss, that's the Spill Investigation Program Manager with North Dakota Environmental Quality, says what happened Sunday was a best-case scenario when it comes to train derailments and chemicals. You never want to see a train derailment, but it will probably get cleaned up the fastest, and that was probably the lowest impact of any train derailment I've had to deal with, Seuss says. Yeah, ethylene glycol, which is automotive antifreeze, is a big one of the releases off of this, which, I mean, let's be realistic. Half the cars in rural Wisconsin are contributing to that kind of a spill. With colder weather and the snow, it's actually to our benefit with this one, Richland County Emergency Manager Brett Lambrecht said. Officials say that now solid asphalt has been collected, stockpiled, and is being recycled. They say it did minimal, if any, damage to the land. It solidified and just didn't go anywhere, Sue said. However, some antifreeze did get into the soil, but probably a lot less than what's in the soil alongside any major interstate. Experts say once it's warmer, the impacted dirt will be dug up and taken to a special landfill, and new soil will be laid on the land. The biggest risks for antifreeze is humans or animals ingesting it, drinking it, so we want to get the free product up. So we sucked it up, Sue said. Working with CP Rail, they're going to restore all our conditions, including the county roads and farmers' yields, the businesses, and everything else. They tell us it will be better than when we found it, Lambrecht said. Well, we'll see. But that is part of the reason that we didn't get this one solidly across every news station across the world. Alright. And we'll skip over this one. This one's a review of the things that we've already looked at here. And we've got one article from the New York Post. Otherwise, everything else is from the Blaze or the Daily Wire. Let's talk about Nashville. From the New York Post, Nashville shooter Audrey Hale was heartbroken over death of friend she may have been infatuated with. From Haley Brown and Stephanie Pagones. Nashville school shooter Audrey Hale was heartbroken over the 2022 death of a girl she was infatuated with and who played on the same basketball team in school. Samira Hardcastle told the Post tomboyish Hale had been deeply affected by the death of Sydney Sims, who was killed in a vehicle accident in August 2022, according to an obituary. Yeah, that seems like it sets the stage as to why somebody may have been mentally damaged to begin with, but realistically, this is almost a year old at this point, but I just feel like she took it differently than some of us did. She was still posting about Sydney almost daily. What I knew of her was more admiring, Sydney, maybe even infatuation. That's specifically who she really, really looked up to. Hale, who police said was a transgender and started to identify using he, him, posted TikTok in February on a since deleted account, I am 8 and 10 dedicated to Sid. The clip showed a shadow of a person bouncing a basketball and the words for Sid. I look up and the sky is bright. It's a beautiful day. I wish you were here. Sounds like a Pink Floyd song. Well, there's a reason that they're doing that, Grant. There actually is a reason. Grant says, I like how no one's using her preferred name, even the woke progies. Eat crap, kid killer. It has to do with what he, she, it, they, them, they, z's, or them did. It's the reason they don't say Aiden and say he, him. If it were to come down and they would start entertaining the delusion, which, I mean, for most of the people in my circle, that's what we look at when we look at something like this. They have to admit that there was something different, there was something off about this person. And they can't do that. Now, this is the New York Post, so this is, if you listen to all of our prog friends, this is another Rupert Murdoch-owned publication, and it's right-wing, and it's pro-Trump, and it's pro-putting all people like this into camps. Which I think some of our mutual friends, Grant, are actually into that. I'm not going to say you or I, but I think some of our mutual friends actually are. Hardcastle said she had last seen Audrey, who shot her way into her former elementary school on Monday and killed 3 9-year-olds and 3 staff, a month ago when they both attended taping to their friend Abriana Patton's radio show. I don't think she was with anyone. She was just kind of by herself, Hardcastle said, adding, I don't think that they were very close, but I think Audrey looked up to her like she looked up to Sydney. But I don't know that it was ever like a two-way thing. Patton was the last person Hale contacted in the minutes before her shooting spree, sending her a message saying, this is my last goodbye, I love you, see you again in another life. She also described Patton as the most beautiful person I've ever seen and known all my life, adding, my family doesn't know what I'm about to do on this day. One day this will all make sense. I've left more than enough evidence behind, but something bad is about to happen. So, maybe a little bit of a lead into what happened with that. Let's grab one from the Blaze. On the reactionary side, Republican senator suggests automatic death penalty for deranged monsters who perpetrate school shootings. What's the word I'm looking for? Oh yeah, based. From Alex Nitzberg. Rick Scott has floated the idea of automatic death penalty for those who perpetrate school shootings. We need to consider automatic death penalty for school shooters. Life in prison is not enough for the deranged monsters who go into our schools to kill innocent kids and educators. Pray for all facing the unimaginable in Nashville. This is horrible and must stop, Scott tweeted. which of course nobody on the left will go through. As much as they want to say that it's about the guns and the evil right-wingers who perpetrate mass shootings, I mean, if we look down at the statistics of, and by the way, statistics are something that make our friends on the left very, very uncomfortable. But if we actually look at the statistics of what actually happens with this, we see a long trail of ooh. That's fair. Going back to what I was saying, though, that would make our friends to the left very uncomfortable because, again, if we look down through the statistics, Vegas, Aurora, not Aurora, that wasn't another one, but I mean, even the moron in Buffalo in his little screed was talking about socialistic policies. Uvalde, that was a leftoid, possibly transgender. I still question whether or not that's true or not, by the way, because everyone in the mainstream media is telling me that it's not, and I don't know about that. I think it might have been true. The gay club shooting, the Muslim shooting in Orlando. I mean, most of these people are the people that our friends of the left are trying to take care of, whether or not it's an actual leftoid. They are people who are... The left is sympathetic too, and I'm sure that at least half of them are probably left-wing voters. I'm almost positive this person would have been. I can almost say that with certainty. The senator's tweet on Monday came after someone perpetrated a shooting in a Christian school in Nashville. Yeah, we know about that. I'd be for it. I do have a problem with the government taking a life without due process. But again, and like Grant said, even though I wasn't really a big fan of the situation behind that, I will point out the fact that, yeah, this person was also caught in the act of doing it. And I do think that should carry some deference to it. But I, in general, am still a fan of trial by jury. So we do have that to go with as well. From the Daily Wire. Melissa Joan Hart into the news. Melissa Joan Hart tearfully recounts helping kindergartners escape Nashville shooting. From Hank Berrien. I didn't know this about Hart, by the way. I actually didn't. Actress Melissa Joan Hart said in a tearful video Tuesday that she and her husband helped kindergartners flee the Nashville school shooting. Hart and her husband, Mark Wilkerson, have 3 sons, aged 17, 15, and 10. Hart is known for starring in sitcoms Clarissa Explains It All, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and Melissa and Joey. I've been looking on Paramount just because I want the blast from the past to see, because I know they carry all the other Nickelodeon shows, if they would carry Clarissa, and so far they don't. But I'd be interested in seeing that again, if that was the possibility. We can watch the video here. But Hart goes on to explain that she was in Connecticut, just a little ways down from Sandy Hook. And now she's also not that far. I don't know if she lives right by the school, but I know that her kids go to the school that's right down the road from the school here. So let's listen.
Hey guys, for those of you that know, I live in Nashville, and what's been going on here today, my kids go to school right next to a school where there was a shooting today, and we moved here from Connecticut, where we were in a school a little ways down from Sandy Hook, so this is our second experience with a school shooting with our kids being in close proximity. Luckily, we are all okay, but my husband and I were on our way to school for conferences, and luckily our kids weren't in today, and we helped a class of kindergartners across a busy highway that were climbing out of the woods, that were trying to escape the shooter situation at their school. So we helped all these tiny little kids cross the road and get their teachers over there, and we helped a mom reunite with her children. And I don't know what to say anymore. It is just enough is enough. And just pray for the families.
which you should be doing, yes. I like Melissa Joan Hart. I really do. So, you never know who you're going to run across, especially in big cultural towns like Nashville, too. I'm a little surprised to find out that she was in that same general region, but, I didn't know that she lived in Nashville either. Another one from The Blaze. We're not going to fix it, Republican says Congress cannot solve gun violence problem. U.S. needs revival. From Alex Nitzberg. In the wake of the deadly shooting at the Christian school in Nashville, Tim Burchett of Tennessee says he does not think that there's a role for Congress to tackle the nation's gun violence problem, but that revival is needed and people's hearts need to be changed. He made the comments after a 28-year-old shooter killed 3 children and 3 adults at Covenant. We're not going to fix it. Criminals are going to be criminals, Burchett said. He also said there's a mental health problem in the U.S. that needs to be tackled. And every leftoid said, oh yeah, but the evil GOP voted against the mental health bill because it had so many riders. It made a metropolitan bus jealous. I don't think there's any real role that we could do other than mess things up. Honestly, he said, based. Burchett, who noted that he's Christian, says a revival is needed. He said that he believes ministers and communities of faith must come together to preach from the Bible about love. During an interview with CBS, the congressman said the core problem is evil, and that someone would even say demonic possession. I don't know about that, but he also said there's a mental health crisis in the U.S. You're not going to stop evil, he said. Evil people are going to do evil things. Burchett suggested having school security guards could help deal with the issue, but it is a band-aid, and I talked about this. Now, I tinfoil hat every once in a while, and one of the things that I noticed, again, was that there wasn't really any sort of, these school shootings didn't happen before the 1994 assault weapons ban. They didn't happen, and they didn't really start happening until we were starting to approach the sunset of the assault weapons ban. And they didn't really kick into gear until the assault weapons ban was over. And now they happen, supposedly, if you listen to Everytown all the time, but keep in mind that Everytown statistic does include police academies with an accidental discharge. That's considered a school shooting. And as Christensen even pointed out at one point in one of his videos, it also includes a guy going on to the site of a demolished school and blowing his own brains out. Yeah, that was considered in Everytown school shooting statistics in 2018. So, and again, I don't know. I do think that he's right. I don't know if we have the wherewithal left to have the revival that he's looking for off this, but I do wonder myself, again, if some of these aren't being perpetrated by people who are being hired to advance a political agenda. Because again, they almost always turn out to be leftoids. Psychotropics from motherless homes. Another one from the Daily Wire. Biden jokes about whether or not Christians were targeted by Nashville shooter. I don't know if there's video on this one or not. It appears that Brandon has outdone himself, and not in a good way. Just after the ink dried on this author's last column about President Biden's offensive response to the Nashville school shooting, he outdid himself by reaching a new low, joking about whether or not Christians were targeted by the shooter. Am I going to get a video? Yes, I am. Tuesday afternoon, Biden stopped to chat with the press reporters outside the White House and was asked whether or not he agreed with Josh Hawley's assessment the school shooting was specifically aimed at Christians. Let's listen.
Do you believe that Christians I have no idea.
Josh totally believes they were. What do you say to that?
Well, I probably don't then.
Probably don't.
No, I'm joking. No, I have no idea.
What? Hold on. I can't believe that one. I can't believe this is evil if this is true.
Do you believe that Christians were targeted in Nashville school shooting? Do you believe that Christians were targeted?
I have no idea.
Josh totally believes they were. What do you say to that?
Well, I probably don't then.
Probably don't.
No, I'm joking. No, I have no idea.
Hey, because my political enemy believes that this was a hate crime, that means that I have to believe that it was. Oh my God, you can't be serious right now. In a response, Holly tweeted, "What a disgrace," while adding, "There's nothing remotely funny about hate crimes." Uniter in chief, everybody. And the last one on Biden and the last one on the school shootings so far, but I do have another one about the culture war and possibly the Civil War after this. From The Blaze, pushing for gun control, Biden erroneously says, you're not allowed to own a flamethrower, man. You are. From Andrew Shapados. President Biden recently and falsely claimed it's illegal to own a flamethrower in the U.S. while giving remarks to the economy, job market, and of course the recent school shooting at the Covenant School. Do we have video? No, we don't have video. As reported by Fox, the president once again remarked on the Second Amendment, claiming he's a Second Amendment guy before explaining that he does not believe it to be absolute. The president then explained what he believes were types of weapons civilians were not allowed to own. We need to act. These are weapons of war, Biden said while giving comments in Durham. Well, there is a certain subset of people who would like to go to war with you. You're not allowed to go out and own an automatic weapon. You're not allowed to own a machine gun. Both are false, by the way. You're not allowed to own a flamethrower. You're not allowed to own so many things. Why in God's name do we allow these weapons of war in our streets and at our schools? However, flamethrowers are certainly illegal in the U.S. and are not considered to be a firearm, even though they literally use fire by the ATF, according to Fox. So, yeah, he was wrong. And now I want to touch on this one here. This came to my Discord, and it came, I think, to the other Discord as well. From Mail Online. Wayne State University English professor is suspended and referred to police after saying Stanford students who abused conservative judge should have killed him instead of just heckling. From Sophie Mann for DailyMail.com. Wayne State University suspended an English professor and referred him to police for saying Stanford students who abused a conservative judge should have killed him instead of just heckling. The professor is believed to be Stephen Shaviro, a self-styled philosopher and teacher of the English. At the university, he wrote that Stanford students would be justified in killing a conservative judge whose appearance on campus was recently protested. President Roy Wilson announced the suspension Monday, which is when he said the school became aware of the post. In a note, Wilson wrote that the professor works in the school's English department and has been suspended with pay. Shaviro's controversial post read, "Although I do not advocate for violating federal and state criminal codes, I think it's far more admirable to kill a racist, homophobic, or transphobic speaker than it is to shout them down." The professor wrote that its right-wing groups invite speakers to campuses across the country in order to provoke a reaction from progressive groups. Or, possibly because they actually want to hear from that speaker. When Knowles went to UW Whitewater, I actually didn't know about it until it was way too late. Otherwise, I probably would have bought a ticket. And even seen if there was a way that I could go smoke a cigar with the dude. The protesters get blamed instead of the bigoted speaker. The university admin finds the perfect excuse to side publicly with the racists or phobes. The national and international press has a field day, saying the bigots are the ones being oppressed rather than the people those bigots actually hate being the victims of oppression. What newspaper says that a person like Knowles or Shapiro is being oppressed? I'd like to see that, other than their own publications, obviously. Finally, the professor goes on to cite the instance of Sholem Schwarzbard, a Jewish Russian-born French poet who in 1926 assassinated Simon Petliura, the former head for the Ukrainian People's Republic. Schwarzbard held Petliura responsible for the deaths of his family who had been killed in the 1919 pogroms. He killed Petliura on the street in Paris. The exemplary historical figure in this regard is Sholem Schwarzbard, who assassinated the anti-Semitic butcher Simon Petliura rather than trying to shout him down. Remember, Schwarzbard was acquitted by a jury which found his action justified, wrote the professor. That is a danger, by the way, if you're going into a major left-wing area, to go and speak. Something that I've considered when I started doing this and wondering if I would ever grow to a point where I would be invited to speak at, like, UW-Madison or something, which I probably would not go to. Simply based on the fact that if I got killed, that person would sit in front of 12 progressives. Wilson's email went on to say that the Post had states that rather than shouting down those with whom we disagree, one would be just justified to commit murder to silence them. The posts have since been removed from the internet, and Shapiro has been suspended with pay. They are going towards the direction of one-party rule. We looked at the post yesterday where the woman said straight out, none of this is going to change until we have 100% of all 538 seats in Congress and the presidency, all in Democrat hands. The violence isn't going to stop until we make gun laws, which sounds like a threat to me. And when these people tell you who they are, believe them. But on the other end of the news, here's some good news for you. From CBS, Manhattan grand jury and Trump hush money probe unlikely to meet on Wednesday. Just 2 more weeks. From Graham Cates and Pat Milton. A New York grand jury investigating whether former President Trump authorized the falsification of business records will not meet on Wednesday, according to 3 sources familiar with the matter. Unnamed, of course. The grand jury first began hearing witnesses in January, but its 2 most recent witnesses were heard on Monday this week and last, with no other Trump-related matters considered for the rest of either week. Earlier this month, the office of the Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg invited Trump to appear before the grand jury, but he declined. The grand jury has twice heard from 2 key witnesses in the probe. Cohen himself, who has encouraged the investigation and repeatedly met with persecutors this year before testifying, and David Pecker, the former publisher of the National Enquirer tabloid. So, yeah, they're not meeting now, and also probably not for most of April. From CNN, New York grand jury investigating Trump will break for most of April, sources say. Let's actually listen to this here for just a moment.
You keep asserting what this investigation is, and we haven't seen an indictment, we haven't seen charges, we haven't seen evidence. What if District Attorney Bragg comes forward with an indictment, with evidence, and proof that Donald Trump did commit these crimes? You still think he shouldn't be charged?
Well, we believe that he should come explain to us exactly what he's investigating, because at the end of the day, this is a presidential candidate. This is the, for better or worse, leading contender for the Republican nomination of the presidential election next year, as well as a former president of the United States. It's unprecedented for a local district attorney to investigate things that we believe the statute of limitations expired years ago. Now, look, if the special counsel that's looking into this wants to do something, if the Department of Justice wants to do something, then they probably, for better or worse, have the ability to do that. This is a local DA. We believe the local DAs need to be focused on business crimes, on burglary, on thefts, on carjackings, and all the things that we see happening in these big cities that are creating a crime crisis in America.
So a lot of your fellow Republicans on the Senate side seem to be concerned about what you and your fellow committee chairman in the House side are doing. Senator John Cornyn of Texas said, quote, "I personally prefer to see them work on the agenda they ran on and that got them the majority." Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina said, "I think you've got to fall short of getting involved in the legal process." Senator Jerry Moran, Kansas, said, "You want to know lots of facts before you set down that path." They seem to think that you and your colleagues are going way beyond looking into the use of federal funds and are risking interfering in a local investigation of a private citizen allegedly accused of committing a crime that someone's already gone to prison for.
Again, this is a local investigation. It's not a sincere argument to say it's a local investigation when you're investigating a presidential candidate and the former president of the United States.
The president has once again reiterated his call for
And Comer's absolutely right on what he finished off with that too by saying, like, he's right on the money. It is possibly a local investigation into a misfiling of deeds and misfiling of funds that happen in his state. But when you look at what's actually happening with that, what's actually going on with that, this is a way to put the former president and leading contender for the presidency into the news. So absolutely right on the money. This is more than just some local investigation. But as was reported on CNN, the grand jury will not be meeting for most of April. From Lauren DeValle, Jeremy Herb, and Ariel Edwards-Levy. The Manhattan grand jury hearing the hush money case involving Trump is currently scheduled to break after April 5th and restart later in the month, according to a source familiar with the matter. If the grand jury does not hear the case again for several weeks, it will pause what had been a wave of anticipation that a former president could be indicted for the first time in American history. Trump himself incorrectly predicted. That was not him incorrectly predicting. That was him playing you. That he would be arrested last week amid news reports about security preparations being made in the event of an indictment. It comes as the new Quinnipiac poll shows 55% of Americans view the accusations against Trump as at least somewhat serious. The planned hiatus surrounding upcoming religious holidays and city public schools' spring vacation was previously scheduled for the investigative grand jury, which was impaneled to serve for 6 months. The grand jury is also not expected to hear the Trump hush money case Thursday or next week, when they're scheduled to hear other cases, the source said. Just 2 more weeks, Blue Anon. Just 2 more weeks. It's coming. It's absolutely coming. Just 2 more weeks. It's not coming. And it might actually still, especially given this is political, but I have a hard time believing this. And like I said, when I said that Trump played them like a fiddle, one of the things that was going on with this is this was completely going on in the background. Nobody talked about this. Nobody heard about this. There were a few other instances out there where somebody on Twitter, some leftoid out there, would start the conversation by saying that Trump has no credibility when he says X, Y, or Z because he's being investigated and the walls are closing in and Alvin Bragg is going to go put him in jail. But for the most part, it wasn't a thing that got talked about. And it could just happen with impunity without anybody talking or anything. When Trump brought it up and he said, "I'm going to be arrested, probably on Tuesday. Go out and make your voices heard," it put the spotlight on Alvin Bragg. And it did not allow them to do anything. This story like this, like there were probably, since they've been impaneled since January, there were probably big vacations since then. You know, Valentine's Day, President's Day, all the federal holidays, things like that. They probably had a week off here, a week off there, or a host of other things since then. And nobody reported on any of it. But now it's in the spotlight. Now it's something that everybody and their brother is paying attention to. And now they can't sit back and hide behind it anymore. Alvin, grand jury, you got played by the Donald. And now you either have to put up or shut up. And all the rest of this is right in the spotlight. And I like that, by the way. I really do. From the New York Post, moving on to government officials behaving badly. Top officials for Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs slammed over vile tweet about shooting transphobes just hours after school killing spree from Victor Nava. A group of Arizona GOP state lawmakers has called for the immediate firing of Democrat Governor Katie Hobbs' press secretary over a tweet invoking gun violence against transphobes. Hobbs spokeswoman Jocelyn Berry posted the offending tweet on Monday, just hours after Audrey Hale, who was transgender, shot and killed 3 adults and 3 children inside a Nashville Christian elementary school. The tweet included a GIF from the 1980 movie Gloria, showing a woman brandishing 2 handguns. "Us when we see transphobes," Berry captioned the image in the tweet. Less than 12 hours after the tragic shooting in Nashville by a deranged transgender activist, Hobbs' press secretary calls for shooting people Democrats disagree with, the Arizona Freedom Caucus tweeted on Tuesday. The group of conservative Republican state lawmakers added that Berry should be fired over the social media post, calling for violence like this is un-American and never acceptable. Berry should be fired immediately. The GOP group added, noting in a follow-up post that Berry's vile tweet encouraging violence has not been taken down after millions of views and widespread condemnation. Well, I'm sure that there was commendation too, by the way. It is unclear if Twitter will take action against Berry's account. Well, that's one way to go with this. But, Calesto reporting from Fox News. Just in, Katie Hobbs' press secretary Jocelyn Berry resigns after advocating for violence against anyone opposed to the trans agenda.
Hobbs' press secretary Jocelyn Berry has resigned after she tweeted this just hours after the Nashville massacre. We covered it earlier. An armed woman alongside the caption, "Us when we see transphobes." Berry resigned after growing pressure from those within her circle and other lawmakers who called the tweet disturbing and highly inappropriate. But of course, as we covered, not the liberal media. So that's news. More outnumbered in just a moment. Press secretary.
Well, Jocelyn Berry, thank you for your service to the government, and thank you for doing something so heinous you can actually get fired from the Democrat Party. To you, I wish. That's right, it is over. Some follow-up on the resignation from Arizona's Family 3. CBS 5, Governor Hobbs' press secretary resigns after controversial tweet following Nashville mass shooting. From Peter Valencia and Dennis Welch. Katie Hobbs' press secretary Jocelyn Berry has resigned hours after posting a controversial tweet that appeared to encourage gun violence just hours after a mass shooting in an elementary school in Texas. The governor's office confirmed first to Arizona's Family that Berry resigned overnight After growing pressure from those within her circle and other lawmakers minutes later, Hobbs made a public statement which reads as follows. The governor does not condone violence in any form. This admin holds a mutual respect at the forefront at how we engage with one another. The post by press secretary is not reflective of the values of the admin. The governor has received and accepted the resignation of the press secretary. So, yeah. That was probably not a good look. And I can kind of see where it was that that Katie Hobbs had to run back out and do damage control for that one. I've got a sandwich here of interesting parts of the climate agenda, with the post-millennial as the bread and Fox News as the meat. Starting with the post-millennial. Biden to issue mandates to reduce emissions by 50% on cars, trucks by 2030, climate czar. From Joshua Young. Biden's climate czar, John Kerry, told Yahoo News that Joe Biden plans on pushing more mandates, especially on cars and trucks, in the U.S. to help attain a goal of cutting U.S. greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030, and for transportation vehicles to produce zero carbon emissions by 2050. Kerry was asked about Biden's $739 billion Inflation Production Act, which allocated $369 billion on climate change goals and promised a 40% reduction in carbon emissions by decade's end, and Kerry said, "Well, we're doing a lot more than just the IRA. The IRA is a package that in and of itself can get to the 40%. But in addition to that, the president is issuing executive orders. And I will still get to fly in my private jet." Let's listen.
And when you stop and think about it, it's pretty extraordinary that we, select group of human beings, because of whatever touched us at some point in our lives, are able to sit in a room and come together and actually talk about saving the planet. I mean, it's so almost extraterrestrial to think about, quote, saving the planet. And if you said that to most people, they think you're just a crazy tree-hugging, lefty, liberal, do-gooder, whatever. And there's no relationship. But really, that's where we are.
The Biden White House has pushed for consumers to move to EVs and has offered tax credits for those who purchase the expensive vehicles. During the Trump admin, Kerry said 70% of new energy came from renewables, but he only speaks of Trump reluctantly. Kerry addressed what would happen if a new Republican admin took office in 2024 and undid Biden's dictates. "Well, achieving our goal is not exclusively dependent on what the federal government says or does. You little people need to go back and buy more expensive things. It is critical, but not wholly dependent. Corporations all around America. The largest corporations in the country, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, and a whole bunch of other disciplines. You've got Boeing, you've got Delta, United. A whole bunch of folks have adopted a net zero 2050 target," Kerry said. Will they get there in 2050? Probably not. "Right now, we're behind because there's so many of you poor people who are not going out and doing more. How could you be poor?" So he is saying down by 50%. And he's also saying there'll be more mandates. We won't go too much further into this one. The Biden admin plans to roll out executive orders and climate mandates affecting automobiles and trucks to reach a 50% reduction in emissions by the end of the decade, according to Special Presidential Envoy for Climate John Kerry. He added that when the U.S. pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement, the U.S. still saw 75% of the new energy that came online came from renewable resources. The former candidate also said achieving the goal is not dependent on federal government mandates, though it is critical. He explained that corporations also must do their parts. Yeah, but that's the free market. And on purpose, they put a Hummer out there. The Hummer EV on top of it. He gave the example of the airline industry doing their part to meet a net zero 2050 target in 2 separate phases, or scopes, to reduce emissions that the industry is responsible for. So, there's that. But, there's your shot. Here's your chaser. Ford to lose billions on electric vehicles. From Joshua Young. On Thursday, the Ford Motor Company said that they anticipate their electric vehicle division to lose $3 billion in 2023 following financial losses over the last 2 years, $2.1 billion in 2022 and $900 million in 2021, but that the losses are expected for a startup company. Yeah, I don't care that your division is brand new. You are not a startup. Ford, you have been marketing and getting people to buy your vehicles. I know, I'm one of them. In fact, I'm wearing a Ford t-shirt right now. You have the entire marketing arm of the company that brought you the most successful pickup in history. 41 years running. You're not a startup. But that the losses are expected for a startup company. According to the Financial Times, Ford's chief financial officer, John Lawler, says, Ford Model E is an EV startup within Ford. And as everybody knows, EV startups lose money when they invest in capability, develop knowledge, build volume, and gain share. The car manufacturing company has said that it hopes by 2026 to produce 2 million cars out of their EV division, known as Model E, and that it will hit 8% profit margin. The company expects to Ford Blue, the name of the company's division that builds gas-powered cars, to bolster the company's transition to EV manufacturing. The company projects Ford Blue will bring in $7 billion in earnings, and their division dedicated to making commercial vehicles, Ford Pro, is projected to bring in $6 billion. The company is committed to manufacturing only electric cars by the year 2040, and has plans to build electric battery plants in Michigan, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Right, but you need customers to buy them. The White House has pushed for more Americans to buy EVs, including an event on clean transit in March, where Kamala Harris says, Imagine a future where freight trucks that deliver bread and milk to our grocery store shelves and the buses that take children to school and work. Imagine all the heavy-duty vehicles that will keep our supply line strong and allow our economy to grow. Imagine that produces zero emissions. Fact check. That has not worked out well for the commercial vehicle industry already. Many of the precious metals used in the manufacture of batteries for EVs are mined through exploitation of human trafficking, child labor, and modern-day slavery in the Congo and China, where criticism has mounted that the Uyghur Muslim communities have been forced into slave labor in the Xinjiang province, where EV batteries are manufactured. In February, Ford announced a joint venture with contemporary Amperex Technology, a Chinese company, the construction of a US-based EV plant. So, and that's a part of the problem too. Yes, they're losing money because now I'm not going to be the kind of person who tells you that this is something that's never going to work. I've never been that kind of person. I've always thought that the concept of an electric vehicle is kind of cool for people who want it. You run an electric motor. It's incredibly torquey. And for doing the stuff that you needed to do, it just works for what you needed to do. Most people don't care about having 415 horse performance out of a V8 that sounds like a V8, like I do. I wouldn't even be opposed to having an electric vehicle as a little grocery getter to run around town with. Not something for making long-term trips off of, but as a supplemental vehicle to run around. I mean, I've used an electric golf cart working in a campground. It works well. It doesn't work as well as the gas one does, but if you're just tooling around and, you know, taking a shovel or something to a job site, or taking a camper back to their site, the electric ones work fantastic for that. They really do. But number one, first you have to get the people who want to buy them, and remember the fact that they are very expensive. And there's not a used market for them. And the technology, as I've said, is not there right now. It may be in the future. It may very well be. But it is just not there right now for the way that they need it to be in order to placate and change over from the current demand for gas vehicles. I mean, some of the Transit vans that are electric, if you plug those in full charge in the dead of winter on the coldest day of winter, you get 40 miles out of it. You can't do much commercially on 40 miles. But diesel, you still get 500 miles out of a tank. Or 2 tanks technically, but... And again, I don't sit here and think that we're not going to go down into an EV future. Or it's at least a viable alternative. I just don't think we're there yet. This is a behind the paywall at the Daily Wire. So fuck the Daily Wire for that. But we've got some more financial news. Pushing states for $20 minimum wage as inflation persists. From Maysoon Khan. Guys, the minimum wage here is still $7.25, and like nobody makes it. Because every company has had to compete with Quick Trip, who starts people at 15. Just years after labor activists persuaded a handful of states to raise their minimum wage to $15 an hour, workers initially thrilled with the pay bump are finding their hard-won gains erased by inflation. Well, there's that, and there's also the fact that if you make all the labor in an area cost more, it means that the products that are sold and come from the area all also have to cost more. Anthony Rivera, 20, who sorts packages at UPS in Brooklyn, said he had to take a second job at a grocery store after his food costs soared. I was sitting at $15 an hour at UPS when it came to paying the bills and buying groceries. It was starting to become not enough, he said. That led me to no other option than to pick up another job. New York, California, and Mass are among states where pro-labor forces are now pushing proposals that, if approved, would boost minimum wages to $20 or more in the coming years. Inflation has meant that something that cost us $15 in 2012, when labor activists adopted the Fight for 15 slogan in a push for wage hikes, that would probably cost them about $20 today, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. I bet you it'd be more than that. But opponents of the wage hike say that it can be detrimental to small businesses, which already took a major hit during the pandemic. Cindy Lee, owner of the bowling alley in Endicott, New York, said she's struggling to pay off loans taken out during the pandemic that kept her business afloat. All this cost all at once is just going to kill us. I definitely will have to cut corners somewhere with employees if wages are raised, said Lee, adding that she'd also have to increase prices on bowling, food, and liquor. And I love the fact, by the way, that the answer to this, what they're saying, is if you can't afford to pay people $20 an hour, you shouldn't be in business anyway. Meaning that the only people that our friends to the left believe should be running a business are the billionaire oligarchs that they hate. And again, I remind you, minimum wage in Wisconsin is still $7.25, and nobody makes that. Because especially as fast as Quick Trip is expanding. Everywhere they put up a Quick Trip, the minimum wage becomes, by market force, not necessarily because of the law, but by market force, the minimum wage becomes $15. And there is literally a Quick Trip on every corner in the city that I live in. It's like Dunkin' Donuts was in Mass. Because they go on hiring sprees and they always have hiring signs in the windows. And every other minimum wage kid who was making $7.25 before goes over to Quick Trip to make more. Now, I want to address what was happening with the UPS employee over here, because I will cite some sympathy for this. This is somebody who works in Brooklyn, so keep in mind cost of living is way up off of here. I was sitting at $15 an hour at UPS, and when it came to paying bills and buying groceries, I was starting to become not enough, he said. That led me to no other option than to pick up another job. Which is, again, it's part of the reason that I moved in the first place here, to get to where I'm at right now. Because while I made more than enough to cover my bills, to keep the roof over my head, to keep my truck paid off and the insurance on my truck, and take a crack at the student loans, I made more than enough to deal with that. Absolutely more than enough to deal with that. The fact of the matter is that when I moved into the place that I lived in, and then transferred jobs from Madison to Janesville where I was working, giving myself a 5-mile commute, I took a very, very big standard of living increase in order to do that, but that was starting to get erased by inflation, and they wouldn't pay me anymore, period. And I would have liked to stay with the standard of living that I was at. I could do it. And I was making like $19.80 an hour. I could do it. I can make it on $19.80 an hour. It would be tight, but I could make it. Whereas I came here, and by the way, this is a teaser for things that I like, by the way. And I should have said this last Thursday, but the teaser for things that I like is, even in the small town of Redacted, where I lived down there, there was a $75 per axle wheel, $37.50 per axle wheel tax. So every vehicle that you had on top of your Wisconsin registration, you had to pay $75 extra for the pleasure of keeping your vehicle in the municipality of Redacted. And the next town over of Redacted, or in Janesville was even worse. Kenosha had one. Kenosha implemented one right after I left. But Kenosha had one. Madison had a really bad one. The little town that I lived in outside of Madison had one, but it was late. I went over to, because my plates expired in January and I never renewed them. I went over to the DMV and changed the address on my plates, renewed the plates, changed the address on my driver's license. There's no wheel tax where I live. You pay the state registration fee and nothing else where I live, which is an incredible feeling. On top of the fact that I got a $12,000 a year raise to live here. But yeah, and I understand where it's getting tough, especially in some of these cities like San Francisco, New York. But these should all be local things to begin with. There should be no federal minimum wage. The state should apply the minimum wage based on their cost of living, the products, and the beliefs that they have in the system. And again, a reminder that even in states where we haven't moved beyond the federal minimum wage, we have private companies that are driving up the standard. From Fortune. After Gen Z helped elect Biden, White House worries TikTok ban will lose every voter under 35 forever. From Jonathan J. Cooper and the Associated Press. Recent moves by President Brandon to pressure TikTok over its Chinese ownership and approve oil drilling in an untapped area of Alaska are testing the loyalty of young voters, a group that's largely been in his corner. Youth turnout surged in the 3 elections since Trump was elected president in 2016, helping Biden eke out victories in swing states in 2020, pick up a Democrat Senate seat in 2022, and stem political losses in the House. But the 80-year-old president has never been the favored candidate of young liberals itching for a new generation of American leadership as Biden gears up for an expected re-election campaign. A potential TikTok ban in the Alaska drilling could weigh him down. Meanwhile, his plan to wipe out billions of dollars in student loan debt is in jeopardy at the Supreme Court. The effort, announced shortly before last year's midterms, was an attempt by Biden to keep a promise he made after defeating Bernie Sanders in the Democrat primary in 2020. The risk for Biden is less that young left-of-center voters will vote Republican, and more that they would sit out an uninspiring election altogether. No, they'll still get out, because the issue with this, and I understand and I hear the complaints from Gen Z, from left-wing Gen Z. I hear the complaints about what they're trying to say with this, and that's the fact that he doesn't do enough, he's not our candidate, we never liked him. But right before election time, there will be another push of, if you don't vote for this person, then evil, insert demon name here, which is probably going to be Trump, will win, and he'll put you back in shackles, and he'll make the world conservative and make it over in his image, and it'll be the great Satan again. I mean, the religious push will come back out there, and these people, just like they said, they're not going to vote for Republican. This is too important. It's the most important election of our lifetimes. It's too important to sit out. You realize they've been doing that rhetoric since I've been old enough to vote, and even longer than that. I'm a Democrat, but I'm not voting for Biden, said Mark Buellman, a 20-year-old Arizona State University student who said he likely would abstain if Biden is Democratic nominee. He won't. He may be capable of doing a good job, but he's not capable of gathering the troops, rallying the people, especially the Democrat voter base. I don't think he's a strong candidate. But yeah, they're not going to vote Republican. It's just not going to happen. But who our friends on the left think needs to get the nomination, rather. We go back to our friends on The View. It's been a few days since I've had to cite these morons. Joyless Behar. Trump is the one who needs to get the nomination because then Democrats will win! From Daily Wire News. Let's listen. Nicholas Fondacaro says faux conservative Alyssa Farrah Griffin claims Ron DeSantis is the most overhyped politician in America. She claims his re-election was simply good and suggests he's never taken a shot at Trump. I want to see him take a punch at Trump. Behar admits they want Trump.
But Whoopi alluded to something I think is interesting, which is I have been saying at this table for months, I think Ron DeSantis is the most overhyped politician in America. I think this notion that he's who's going to save...
There's a reason for that, by the way. There's a reason that he's so hyped. AstroTurf.
The GOP from Trump, and he's going to soar the nomination. It's overhyped. He had a good midterm election, being reelected in Florida.
Who else would they go elect?
Well, and unquestionably, like he got reelected. He did a good job. But this is a man. I want to see two things. I want to see him sit down with a neutral interviewer like a George Stephanopoulos and actually answer tough questions about his policies. I've never seen him do a major, national sit-down interview. And then secondly, you don't beat Trump by not going after Trump. I want to see him take a punch at Trump and how not physically.
He's going to miss because he's a dweeb.
Well, that's the thing is
DeSantis is what they call a dweeb. and Trump is the one who needs to get the nomination because then the Democrats will win. He's a two-time loser already. Hello.
But he also has
loser.
And By the way, there's a point to what Behar had to say about that. It's not the point that she's going to publicly come out and say, but one thing to keep in mind. They have, number one, if DeSantis is the nominee, then there are thousands, maybe millions of archived tweets showing people like Alyssa Farrah Griffin, and even Behar, Goldberg themselves praising Ron DeSantis for being the good conservative, the good one, that they're going to have to talk away when now they're trying to paint him as the great Satan. So there's that aspect of it. Number two, they already have all the articles, even stuff that hasn't come out yet, but they've got all the talking points, they've got all the articles already written, they have got every point debunked, they've got Trump's agenda, they've got what they claim Trump's agenda is going to be, that's all already written. They need Trump to be the nominee, especially with the looming indictment. They need that because, again, they think that he's going to be easy to beat. They already know how to honk a Trump electoral bid. And I hate to say it, just looking at some of these people that are out here, I do think that if Trump runs, I don't know that he wins. I think he gets the nomination because I think, like Styx says, a lot of the states just take his technical incumbency and they run without a primary. And I think he wins that way. And I think there are enough states that he automatically has the delegates to get there. But I see a lot of people, especially surrounding Operation Warp Speed, that claim that, again, these people are never going to vote for a Democrat. But they claim that they're just going to sit it back out. We will see what happens in November of next year. From Politico, speaking of Trump. Trump makes a big move in the Granite State. From Lisa Kaczynski. Donald Trump has tapped an operative to lead his 2024 efforts in New Hampshire. And for that role, he's turned to a veteran of the former Florida Governor Jeb Bush and his 2016 presidential bid. Please clap. Trevor Naglieri will serve as Trump's New Hampshire state director, according to two GOP operatives familiar with the move. This is why I don't think he wins, because he hasn't learned his lesson from before. Naglieri was a field coordinator for Bush in 2016 and went on to serve as New Hampshire field director and then national field director for Ted Cruz. He most recently managed Pennsylvania Republican Jeremy Schaffer's unsuccessful 2022 congressional bid. He also did stints at Republican consulting firm Axiom Strategies. Naglieri is Trump's second big hire in New Hampshire. 2 months ago, Politico first reported that former state GOP chair Steve Stepanek, a longtime ally, would serve as a senior advisor for the former president in a first-in-the-nation primary state. The two join Alex Latcham, one of Trump's Iowa hires, who's overseeing all early state operations. New Hampshire handed Trump his first primary win in 2016, in which he defeated both Bush and Cruz. But he went on to lose the state in both the 2016 and 2020 generals, which was a surprise to me. The Naglieri hire further illustrates the dual tracks Trump is currently on, moving aggressively on a third run for the White House while simultaneously battling legal woes on several fronts. His rivals have yet to take similar steps in the staffing front. Yeah, but here's the thing. He hasn't learned his lesson. He's hiring a Bush operative. You might as well just come back out and say that he's going to bring back Bill Barr and John Bolton and all the other deep state swampers who made his life a living hell the last time. We don't want these people in our government. What did I say? As we were going in and people were starting talking about primarying, and even the fact, like when George C. Bush is elected to some, what is he? AG in Texas or something. No more Bushes, no more neocons, no more war. We don't want these people in government anymore, as much as the mainstream media would love to tell you that we would love to have good, stalwart Republicans. No more. And he's just going to surround himself with these same morons. He's going to do it the same way that he did last time, and then wonder why his life was a living hell in the White House. From CBS, feds offer $20,000 reward for info on fugitive Roy McGrath, ex-chief of staff to Maryland governor. From Caitlin Yelek. The FBI and U.S. Marshals Service are each offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of Roy McGrath, the former chief of staff to ex-Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, who became a fugitive after failing to appear at a trial on wire fraud and embezzlement charges earlier this month. An intense federal manhunt has been underway since McGrath, 53, failed to appear in federal court in Baltimore. On March 13th, a judge issued a warrant for his arrest, and the FBI soon searched his house in Naples and interviewed his relatives. I bet he got Clinton cited. The Bureau released a wanted poster on Tuesday featuring 3 photos of McGrath and listing a number of aliases that he could be using, including Roy Carlos McGrath, Roy Charles McGrath, Roy Baislayadu, R.C. Baislayadu, Roy MacGrath, R.C. MacGrath, and R.C. McGrath. McGrath surrendered his passport after his arrest, and marshals had previously, but the FBI said McGrath should still be considered an international flight risk. After his disappearance, his attorney, Joseph Murtha, told the Associated Press he had spoken with McGrath about the case a few days before he failed to appear in court. His behavior is so out of the ordinary for him, Murtha told the Associated Press. He's dead. I guarantee you he's dead. I'm going to walk back guarantee. I'm going to say 85% he's dead. Why he's dead, I don't know, but I would bet dollars to dimes right now he's dead. So, we'll see what happens with that. But they really want to take him in. From the Baltimore Sun. Roy McGrath's wife fears for his safety as search for him continues, attorney says. From Lee O. Sanderlin and Alex Mann. I bet you anything he's dead. By now, federal investigators likely have tried tracking Roy McGrath's phone. They probably reviewed his bank records and interviewed anyone close to him, too. Agents on Tuesday descended on the Naples, Florida neighborhood where McGrath has lived since shortly after he resigned under scrutiny from his brief stint as former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan's chief of staff. This type of boot-leather investigative work, former federal prosecutors and law enforcement agents say, is typical of searches for people considered to be fugitives, even in McGrath's case is anything but typical. So, set to begin his federal trial on Monday in Baltimore on charges unlikely to condemn him to life in prison if convicted. McGrath never appeared in court. The 53-year-old apparently has been missing since Sunday night, when he was supposed to board a plane for Maryland. After briefly delaying the court proceedings, District Judge Deborah Boardman issued a warrant for McGrath's arrest, while also expressing concern for his well-being. He said he was getting on the plane to Baltimore. This is not a life sentence. This is probably a 6-month stint in a white-collar prison. He's dead. I don't know where or how, but why. But 85% says he's dead. And yes, it might be because he has information about Hillary Clinton. The U.S. Marshals charged with bringing McGrath into custody has been looking for him since and is providing few details about the search. The agency circulated a wanted poster for McGrath on Tuesday, but the spokesman declined to answer questions. I would be, honestly, Grant, just as open to say it was an accident of some sort. Although maybe the recipients of the money that he supposedly embezzled wanted him to be silenced or thought that he was going to turn on them. But for the most part, heart attack on the way to the airport, although they probably would have found him at this point. Or something. Or again, maybe it was that he got Clinton cited. I don't know. But I don't... For the details of this, I don't see a reason for him to be fleeing. He'll still have name recognition. He'll still be able to get a job. And again, he'll likely spend less than 6 months in the prison. And it's a white-collar prison. The only explanation I can think is that somehow, some way, he died on his way somewhere between... My question here actually is, did he show up for his flight? Did he get on his flight? But somewhere between his home and his flight to Baltimore, he died in some way or another. That's the only logical explanation I can think of for this. I don't think he's on the run. I really don't. Martha added he was unsure of the last time Laura Bruner saw her husband. Well, I guess we'll find out, but my guess is he's dead. Hey, we have some good news for once. But that one had to be archived because, well, it had to be archived. Please turn off your ad blocker to look at CBS. No. That's the Chad no right there for you. Senate votes to repeal Iraq war authorizations 20 years after the U.S. invasion. Well, better late than never. From Caitlin Yelek. The Senate on Wednesday voted to repeal the legal justifications used to attack Iraq in 1991 and 2003, endorsing a rare bipartisan effort by Congress to revoke the authority to wage war from the executive branch just days after the 20-year anniversary of the start of the Iraq War. In a vote of 66 to 30, the Senate approved a resolution to repeal the 2002 authorization for the use of military force, or AUMF, that Congress had adopted ahead of the March 2003 invasion by U.S. and Allied troops, as well as the 1991 authorization for the first Gulf War. Proponents of repealing the authorization say doing so is necessary to prevent future presidents from abusing their power while not hamstringing current counterterrorism efforts. The U.S., Iraq, and the entire world has changed dramatically since 2002. Which is weird because there was really no justification to be in Iraq in 2002 to begin with. And it's time the laws on the books catch up with those changes. These AUMFs have outlived their use. These repeals will not harm our service members abroad, nor will it hinder our ability to keep Americans safe, Chuck Schumer said on the Senate floor ahead of the vote. Every year, we keep these AUMFs on the books as another chance for future admin to abuse them. War powers belong in the hands of Congress. No shit, Sherlock. I have been telling you that since I first had a political voice. That there's no reason for the U.S. presidency to have unilateral war power. That's part of the reason that I like Trump. Is in spite of all the problems and all the spending, he didn't jump out to use his war powers to go back and try to force us into another war. He seemed to have no interest in it, and he also turned around and got his MAGA followers, most of which I don't agree with, but got them anyway, to come back out and say, no, we're not interested in war anymore. The two good things that I can credit with Donald Trump is that he actually lowered taxes for middle American people. As much as the left will try to tell you that's not the case, he actually lowered taxes for middle American people. And he made war a dirty word among Republicans. Those are the two things I will credit that man for. There's some smaller things here and there, but those are the two big ones. The legislation now heads to the House, where lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are open to taking action In 21, when Democrats controlled the House, the lower chamber voted to repeal the O2 authorization, but never received a vote in the Senate. 49 Republicans have joined nearly all Democrats in voting for repeal this time, or at the time, rather. And I don't care who the president is or what the situation is. And one thing that honestly I didn't mind about having an opposing Congress under the Trump presidency is that that's when a lot of the murmurings of taking the power away from the presidency started to come. And my first thought was, yes, do it. Take it away from him. Take back your power. If you think that he's going to go start World War III with North Korea while he's on the crapper with his phone, take the power away from him. You have that ability. I see this as undoubtedly a win. I don't think this will stop the warmongering around the world. I really don't. But I think it'll slow it down a little bit, or at least the action part of it. They're still going to talk. Alright, what else do we have time for? Not much. I know that. That's probably going to get moved to tomorrow. Julie Kelly says breaking news just when you think the DOJ can't get any dirtier. New motion just filed by defense in Proud Boys trial accusing DOJ of using an FBI informant to spy on and infiltrate their defense team. So you're accusing the DOJ of using an FBI informant to spy on FBI informants? By the way, I still don't buy the Proud Boys. You can try to convince me if you want, but I still don't buy the Proud Boys. The motion goes on. Defendant Zachary Rail, through counsel, and pursuant to the Due Process Clause of the Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, and the court's supervisory power, respectfully moves this court for an order compelling the government to disclose the defense all reports, example FBI 302 reports, and recordings that have been prepared in this case relating to any person, including but not limited to confidential human sources and other witnesses that the FBI communicated with regarding the possibility of any recordings or reports that it may have regarding the defense team. All interviews, reports, or FBI memos relating to the recording or reporting of the defense team, and all internal memos prepared by the U.S. Attorney's Office and Department of Justice attorneys relating to any reporting on the recordings of the defense team. So they're just going out and saying that the prosecution is actually spying on the defense. Mr. Rail is filing this motion on his own behalf and on behalf of all defendants with the consent for their counsel. Mr. Rail and all defendants are herewithin preparing a separate motion to dismiss the indictment for evidentiary hearing, raising serious and substantiated allegations of, and it trails off after that. So, to translate this from Politico, Proud Boys attorneys, informants had contact with the defense team and defendants. From Kyle Cheney, attorneys for 5 Proud Boys on trial of charges of seditious conspiracy said on Wednesday that the Justice Department had informed them that a witness one of them had been prepared to call as part of the defense this week has been a government informant since 2021. During this period of time, the informant has been in contact via telephone, text messaging, and other electronic means with one or more of the counsel for the defense and at least one defendant, said Carmen Hernandez, an attorney for one of the 5 Proud Boys, Zachary Rail, in a motion seeking more details of prosecutors' use of informants in the case. According to Hernandez, who filed the motion on behalf of all 5 defendants, including Tario, the informant had also attended prayer meetings with at least one of the defendants' families and at one point discussed the composition of the defense team. It's the latest wrench in a trial that has stretched into its 4th month, the most significant to emerge from the January 6th Selfie Fest. Prosecutors have charged Tario, Rail, and 3 others, Ethan Nordine, Joe Biggs, and Dominic Pizzola, with igniting the attack, methodically working to breach multiple police lines, and ultimately entering the building itself to prevent Congress from certifying Joe Biden's election as president. Prosecutors pushed back on Thursday, contending that any suggestion of impropriety was baseless, and that the informant was never tasked with gathering information about the Proud Boys' defendants or their lawyers. They produced additional documents to the defense teams outlining the informant's work for the FBI and emphasized that her relationship with the Bureau was terminated soon after she was subpoenaed by Tarrio's lawyers to appear as a witness. It's funny. Wherever these big conspiracies to overthrow the government show up, there always seems to be an FBI agent there. Has anybody noticed that but me? It's weird how that works, isn't it? Alright, I think... yeah. We're gonna do some more of this on things that I like and things that I hate tomorrow. And some of this will also be on main news of tomorrow, but I think we're gonna cut it there. I do still have to travel tonight. So I think we'll call it with that, but before we do, it's Wednesday, which means we talk about something that restores my faith in humanity, something I'm thankful for. It's been an interesting week for me. I've got my first meeting to possibly change my employment coming up on Monday. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I've got my first meeting to do that. So I could always go down the same road of just talking about how grateful I am that I got myself up and I moved away from the situation that I was in. But honestly, we can look at where I'm at right now and some of the things that have changed with that. Where was I? What did we talk about all the way back then? Yes, by the way, this is going to go back and change into the exact same thing that I have been talking about with this. No, Grant, but if you link that to me, I will put that in things I like and things that I hate. I wonder if I know her. I wonder if I've been in contact with this woman. Anyway. I just realized I spent the last 5 weeks in a row at my parents' house, which was cool. One of the things that I do that I note though with where I moved, this past weekend was one of the first times that I spent a significant amount of conversation with somebody that I used to know from my old life, all the way back from when I was a kid. And I'll talk about one, just a little bit off the cuff here. Person, I'm not going to name names. It was one of the bigger jocks in school, and actually a person that I did not get along with when I was younger. I didn't. I can say that right off the bat. Thank you, Grant. Well, yeah, I'll look into that. My old boss's kid was there too, actually. That was interesting. But I ran into him, and, I'd gone over there looking for a cigarette, because I'd been drinking. And I'd grabbed one, and I heard the name, and I recognized, I'm like, is this the same one? And he realized who I was, and he actually called me out by my last name, which of course I'm not going to say here, and he threw his arms around me right away. So, time heals all wounds. It changes a lot of things. I'm still not eager to go back and spend an extended amount of time in the area that I grew up in, just based on some of the nightmares of things that I grew up with, but I can definitely look in and see how time has changed things, how things have become different, and maybe I wouldn't mind seeing some of these people every once in a while. I prided myself for a long time on going into the big local bar in the town I grew up in, and never ever seeing anybody that I know. And for the first time, I actually felt like, this was it wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world to do. So, Eric, if you ever see this, you kind of set this ball into motion. So, I hope you do. I didn't tell them I was in broadcast either, by the way. So, they're probably not watching this, but they may see this in the future. So that's the thing that I'm thankful for. Let's throw the outro music up here. I got to throw some clothes in a bag and head out of here for the night. And eat absolutely terribly. I'm trying not to do that anymore. But I'm going to do this one last time. We'll do the fat weekend and then we're going to get back onto it. I'm going back keto. The portion control thing, it worked for me once. I can't get into it anymore. So if I go strict keto for a little while, maybe I'll sleep at night. Because I've been waking up, and like when you guys saw me last night, part of that came from the fact that for probably the last 2 weeks, I have had such bad acid reflux, which I know I have a wheat intolerance, and I know that I need to pay more attention to that. But such horrifying acid reflux that I was literally up and out of bed several times throughout the night. And it's been going on like that for the last 2 weeks, and it starts at 1 o'clock in the morning. You can almost set your watch by it. So, and my pants are getting a little tight too, so that's going to be coming up here. But let's throw some outro music up, and then I got to get myself onto the road. So, thanks everybody who came by, hung out, chatted in the live chat. It's been a blast. It's been a great day. I'm enjoying doing this awake. Because, well, I'm going to be completely honest with you. If I'd have passed out on stream yesterday, I wouldn't have been surprised. But we got through it all yesterday, we got through it all today, and we actually got to spend some time not talking about the Nashville shooting, which, I mean, we all knew was going to come anyway. So, we'll be back here tomorrow. Yes, even though I'll be out of town for a funeral, I will be back here tomorrow because out of town is only an hour away at this point. So, we'll be back here tomorrow night, same time, and we will see what happens in the news in the next 22 hours. Plus, I guess we'll be talking about an informant on dating apps too. That'll be fun. And we'll have things that I like and things that I hate, which I think a lot of the leftover that we have here is going to be in that segment. So we'll be doing that. And come back and join us here. Bring some friends. Let's see if we can't get that ticker up to 10 tomorrow. Bring some friends, bring some new people over here, get some more people in here. We will see you then. And until tomorrow, I am Jay Edgar. And this is Contemporary. Take care.